Oh, it's like intro music.
All right, friends, it's Friday. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be joined by best-selling author, coach, speaker, Wendy Tamis Robbins, and I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. She's going to talk all things anxiety. She's got a ton to share on this topic because she is an official panic attacker, professional panic attacker. So she's going to share some of her own story on how she's worked her way through that, what that looked like, and most importantly, a really simple tool that you'll be able to use today if you are feeling any sense of anxiety, overwhelm, stress, all of that stuff that we do feel. I even feel in this moment. And before we jump into that, I look a little different today. Those of you who have joined me before might be thinking, what's with Lauren? What are with the warrior stripes and the headband? And those of you who don't know me, I am a confidence coach. I am all about helping women get out of their own way with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, people-pleasing, all that stuff that keeps us tight and in a box. And so I had my closing circle for the group program that I coach on Wednesday. And we all showed up as our warriors within. And not everybody looks like this. Everyone has their own warrior. But what I noticed was I go into these weekly lives and I don't always show up as my warrior within. And I said, what is with that, Lauren? How can you possibly expect to give other people permission if you're not showing up like that yourself? So here I am in all of my ridiculous glory, living it, breathing it, being it. And so I'm just excited to be with you, sharing this space with Wendy. We've been talking, connecting for the last year. We have so much synergy. Wendy, I think once I found your Instagram, I was like, okay, this is my lady. Like, she's my person.
Yeah, same.
But what's interesting is I was also incredibly intimidated by Wendy. Like, I went to her website. I'm like, oh my gosh, talk about my own imposter syndrome coming up and that like feeling, comparing and all that stuff that just shrinks us. And then I got to connect with Wendy as a human, as a person, and I realized how much we share in that, that voice that can kind of dim our light, that can paralyze us, that can keep us really scared. And what I have found so liberating on this journey of life is that the badass, successful woman that I connect with and speak to is not about wanting to show off and be something other than who she is. And she's really looking for that permission to be accepted, that she's enough, despite all the external accolades that people seem to, put on the pedestal and value so dearly. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy to just share and tell us a little bit, Wendy, about your story and what I just shared and how it relates back to you and your journey.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the box because you can see that right behind me. That's the name of my book, right? So, oh, there it is.
Also in my hands, this box is amazing. I felt so much connection, Wendy, through your stories, through your shares, that I felt like you understood me. And you didn't even know me. You were speaking my truth.
Yeah, right. Because you talk too about perfectionism and this, people pleasing and all of these destructive behaviors that we adopt. And there's so much of that in the book. That's so much of my story. I think it's so much of women's stories, the way that we use those techniques to seek external validation, right? Because we're just so terrified of what's going on inside of us. So I guess that's kind of where my story starts, is that when I was growing up, my home life was very chaotic, which is very much like what's going on in the world right now. So as a little girl, I was interpreting this environment as unsafe and looking for ways um, I was creating mental constructs to create that own safety for myself, and I became very hyper vigilant and very sensitive to everything going on around me. And there was just, there was rage and anger and all of these emotions in this little girl, not knowing how to really metabolize that, right? Which is also, I think, what's going on right now for a lot of people. And for me, how that metastasized over time was having these anxiety and panic disorders just grow and grow. And a lot of that was because there was this implicit agreement among everyone that we wouldn't talk about what was going on. And so when a child feels something and then sees something different and hears something different, like everything's fine, but I don't feel fine, and the pieces of the puzzle aren't connecting, it creates this great sense of anxiety and fear, right? So over time, through my own recovery process, what I learned was, and I think Oprah just coined this phrase, this distinction, that it's not about what's wrong with you, it's about what happened to you. So forever, I thought and assumed that I was broken, that the way that I interpreted the world was wrong and was something to be apologized for. Like, okay, well, I'm just not fitting in. I'm not like everybody else. Peace is not something that I will ever feel, right? It's not something I can access because this world does not make sense to me. My body's out of control. My thoughts are out of control. So over my recovery process, what I learned was I had to go back and understand what had happened to me. And that was where I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I had to start feeling and processing all of that rage and fear and emotion again and get that out of me, because that's where, right, if we internalize all of that and all of that energy can't get out, right, we are suffocating, we are drowning. We have chronic pain, we have mental illness. I see it in my clients. I'm a perfect example of it. And when we can release all of that, that's when we find freedom, right? And that's where all of that static, it quiets down. And in that silence, that's where we find our peace.
I know. And it feels like such a paradox when you're in it, right? It feels like, well, I want to just keep pushing it down because if I face it, it's going to take me over. I've heard women say, I can't, I don't have time to, I know I'm stuffing some things, but I don't have the ability to slow down because everything will crumble. It's almost like scared to see what's really under the hood. But what's happening,
like it's going to catch up to you. I have to keep running. So I call people with anxiety like long distance sprinters. They're just going as fast as they can forever. There's no break in sight, right? Because God forbid, like they think that house of cards is just going to come falling down. And then what?
Right.
Actually, when you let it fall, then that's where you find what's underneath all of it, which is your true foundation, your true strength, right?
It almost has to get bigger than the fear has to get bigger than the like story in your head. And I think you touched on that. I don't know if it's in your book or one of your blogs, but sharing how like, and that's why so many people I think have to hit that breakdown, right? That breaking point, because you might consciously know it, but until you kind of hit that wall and you're like, I got nowhere else to go. Except forward. But anyone that might be feeling that little bit of stress and anxiety, like picture it like a balloon. And if you keep going, it's just going, it will pop. You can choose to not do it all at once and
release over time. Exactly. Yeah. You have to let that energy inside of you find a place to be metabolized, released, whatever you want to call it. And when that's a good segue I mean, into what the tool that you were talking about, my 3R model, which just for today's purposes, instead of reduce anxiety, which is one of the R's, I think it's really about releasing, because what we're going through, all of these, whether it's the dehumanizing trans laws that are in, just established in Texas, or the invasion in the Ukraine, or the lingering effects of the pandemic, or social unrest around Black Lives Matter, and the incredible political divide we have in our own country, all of these things contributing to a continuing mental health crisis that is disproportionately affecting our young people, our women, and people of color. We know that. So we have all of this jarring our nervous systems, and everything just feels so chaotic that I think that it's not only about reducing, but the biggest way is about releasing, because we're having these historic events thrust upon us. So there's no way that we can just stay calm. We are feeling enraged. We are feeling angry. We are feeling afraid and sad. And there's just so much, quote unquote, negative emotion right now that we need positive ways, because we're taught that feeling, showing those emotions. Men can't cry. Women can't lead because they're too emotional, whatever those stereotypes may be, right? That they're not acceptable. We need to change that narrative so that we can release them in positive ways, so that then we neutralize everything. And to your point, break everything down, and then start rebuilding with a different mindset, ways that we can find opportunities to help, or lessons, or ways to grow, or whatever that may be. But rather than having that narrow focus on only the problem,
right,
breaking all of that down, and stepping back and getting some perspective, so that we can see that there are opportunities and possibilities and ways to move forward after metabolizing the negative, bringing the positive in.
Yeah, it's like this collective consciousness. And I feel like for the longest time, I mean, generations, it's just been building, it's been building some of this stuff. And we're finally at a place where it's really requiring us to consciously and intentionally choose to release, like to bring awareness to the here, to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like we talk about it, and then our actions don't align with it. So it's like, it's giving also a mixed message in this mental health space. Businesses, companies might be saying, oh yeah, we're implementing this new policy. And then when, that is in alignment with mental health, and well-being and balance. And then I hear the story all the time from my clients. Like, I'm hearing that from my manager, I'm hearing it from the company culture. But then when I step forward and say, like, this, I'm doing the work, there's still a stigma, and it's frowned upon, and it doesn't feel really safe.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of checking the box around it, like, oh, we're going to sign that agreement, and we're all going to, it happened in the legal industry, and a lot of people just sort of put something in place to check the box, and then they continue working feverishly and burning out, and watching people leave or leave the work for whatever it may be, and we're not putting the pieces together quite yet. Like, no, it has to be front of mind all of the time, because otherwise we're really not making any progress.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways, like, how do you, first of all, we've heard it's the reduce, release, and then what is the third R?
Refocus.
Refocus. Okay. So how do you?
So it's recognize. Yeah. So it's recognize. So the first one is recognize. And today I just want to talk about, there are several ways you can do this, but I think it's important right now in this climate that we listen and watch. So we listen to the narratives in our head. So when you first wake up, what are you filling yourself with? You're probably checking in on the Ukraine. You're probably looking at COVID numbers. Maybe you got an email from your child's school about masks, and all of these things are triggering to us, right? So you may be able to identify the narrative really quickly, but it may be you think about it, then you shower, and then you're like, no, I'm fine now. I moved on. Well, Probably not. It's probably now in your subconscious, and you've still triggered on some level that fight or flight response that you're carrying with you throughout the rest of the day. So the next, watch your behavior. That's the next one, because even if you think you're okay and the narrative isn't really front of mind for you and has settled in somewhere below the surface, watch your behaviors. Are you getting more triggered than you normally do? Are you snapping at your kids or your partner? Are you going to the chip drawer? Wait, does everyone have a chip drawer?
I totally have it. I have a chip cabinet.
Oh my God. I was going to say ours is the biggest drawer in the house, but you have a whole cabinet.
Yeah, it's right over there.
Yeah. Like, are you going to the other day I went to the chip drawer like so many times. I'm like, there's no amount of chips in the world that can make me feel better right now.
Right.
That's where I got at that moment.
Can I add to that before you go to the next point about the conscious part about recognizing? Because I love that. I love like being the observer. And something I'm always saying to people is, are you also waking up and the first thing you do is reaching for your phone, and maybe it's never even on the do not disturb or silence, and you've just, before you've even checked in with yourself and said, what's happening in here? Your business is already here.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't consciously done the recognizing. So now you're being swept up into it.
Right. Yeah. And then you get swept up in the rest of the day and you just keep moving through it unconsciously. Right. So it is all about taking a step back, almost watching yourself like you're a character in a movie, getting that separation and becoming the observer. And then recognizing, like, what are you feeling? Are you in lack and attack mode? Are you feeling like, try and name it, like out of control, victimized, powerless? That's a huge one right now, right? These issues are so much bigger than any one of us. We feel so powerless. And so then we go and we try and control everything in our own lives.
Everything else that's not that.
Right. So watching your behavior, are your behaviors controlling? Are they compulsive? Are they impulsive? What's out of line? So when you recognize it and see that, okay, I need to start prioritizing my own mental health because there's something that either I'm internalizing and I need to process. There's just too much anxiety building up, right? When you start to see these behaviors manifesting. So then we get into reducing and releasing, which we were just talking about. And I would say a few of the ways that you can do that. Number one, meditate. I have an amazing meditation that I got from Martha Beck, who's Oprah's life coach and just so accomplished in this area. And that's on my website. So if you go to Wendy Tamis, Tamis, well, it's right there, Robbins.com, and you download the Anxiety Relief Power Pack, it's the first thing in there. And it's the first meditation I was ever able to do because I, for decades, was like, you can't be serious. Like, if you knew what was going on in my mind right now, you would not be so foolish as to suggest that I meditate. Like, forget it. This was the first one. And it's so incredibly powerful.
That's amazing. I'm putting it in the chat right now for everybody.
Yeah, you're able to metabolize and process so much anxiety and pain, and it's just incredible. So that is a great way to start. But I would also say, exercise is great. Another great way is to write. And one of my friends who's an amazing coach, she has her clients write all of their rage, their anger, their sadness, their fears, knowing that they will destroy that page that they wrote on when they're done, because that brings up voices that we are still silencing. If we think there's ever a chance that anyone will ever read what we're writing down, there's a lot of censorship that goes on in there. We're like, I got people in this house who grab my journals. I am not writing that.
Speak to, because this is great. This is well timed. In 7x7, we are talking about journaling as a daily practice, and this just came up yesterday with the women. They were like, a few of them said, if I give a voice to it, I know it's there. Two things happen. One is I ask myself as I'm writing this, is this true, or is this still what I think I'm supposed to be writing down? Like, there's this like inner dialogue, which I completely related to. Is it like, that's one. And I'll let you speak to that if you have any
Well, yeah, I have so many people inside of me now. And that used to terrify me. That thought, if I had ever heard myself say that years ago, I'd be like, oh my God, I have split personalities. But no, they're saboteurs. And
Yeah.
I ask my clients to do that all the time. Even in the meditations that I guide, some of my meditations are, see the thoughts coming in and then name them. Who is that? Is
Mm.
that fear? Is that your mother? Is that your older sister? Is that anger? It could be anything, right? It may be a person that was in your life before. It may be someone in your life now, but it may just be a raw human emotion coming out too. So naming those voices and asking where they're coming from, who they are, what they need, what they're looking for. That is
Yes.
such a huge part of the work.
Release, right? It's a huge part of the release.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also speaking to I love that you say, okay, give that permission that the intention behind this is to write it, release, and destroy,
Mhm.
because there's also this fear I hear often of, well, if I'm giving a voice to it, I'm giving energy to it, especially people who are big into energy and their vibration. So they're like, if I give energy to it, then it might really come true.
Yeah. Yeah. That is why I had therapy immune anxiety, essentially. Every therapist I talked to, I refused to talk about my scary thoughts, everything that was going on in my mind, because I thought exactly that. If I give it voice, it becomes real. And when it's out there, I don't know what to do with it. I assume it will destroy me. That
Mhm.
was my thought process. So I sat there and I kept it all in this lockbox in the
Yeah.
back of my mind that I tried to just dump off the back of the boat, but unfortunately it didn't go anywhere, and it just grew and grew and grew until I got it out there and released it. And I think when you start doing that work, you see that it's actually
Therapeutic.
it's freeing. Yeah,
It's
you can
therapeutic.
feel the lightness come into your body when you get it out.
It's heavy, you guys. This is
Yeah.
heavy stuff that we're weighing. And I was saying this to the woman, a few of the women that were talking about this. I said, it is like you think that by not giving it a voice or bringing awareness to it, it's like stuffing things in your basement that are, but like a banana
Yeah.
and like a big roast beef, and thinking that it's going to like poof, it's rotting. It's
Mhm.
stinky, it's there, and until you just go there and bring light to it and purge it, it actually, like you're saying, it's a release. But I think a huge part of this, Wendy, you tell me if you agree, is finding that safe space of the person who can hold that with you. Because
Yeah.
that's the key too. Because if you're with someone that either starts to worry for you or takes it on, you're gonna all of a sudden be like, oh, that's right. That's why I stuffed this down.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the difference between my first husband and my second husband, honestly. I don't know if you feel the
Amen to
same.
that. Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. But I write about that in my book, that it's very important to analyze the people that are in your life, like do an inventory when people are helping you put the flames out. Are they helping you carry buckets of water, or are they fanning those flames, whether intentionally or not intentionally? So many people, when it comes to mental health, mental illness, feel powerless around people who have depression or anxiety, because maybe they can't understand what they're going through, so they just try and fan it, like, let's put it out, and actually they're creating more, it's making it worse and worse, and they're like, no, you're fine, it's nothing, or but you're so accomplished, so you can't be depressed, or and
Look at you. Do I need to bring up your LinkedIn and your resume? Like, come on. It's like,
exactly, you're so
you're not hearing
fantastic.
me. You're not here. I don't care about that. Right now, what's happening in here is
Exactly.
so scary and painful and
Right, they
lonely.
try and talk you out of your mental struggles because you were strong enough to verbalize them, and now they're trying to talk you out of it. And it's probably, there's a lot of well-intentioned people doing that, but unfortunately it's extremely dangerous. It's really,
Yes.
really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then what is the third R?
Oh, refocused. So once you've diffused your fight or flight response, right? And I touched on this earlier, you've gotten to that neutral point. So
Mhm.
now refocusing all of that energy even if it's anxious energy. Anxiety can be something that can guide and inform you. It can show you where you need to heal an open wound, or maybe you have a pain point somewhere that needs to be re-examined, or maybe it's something you were just terrified of doing, but you didn't realize it was like excitement, because now you're thinking that everything's just anxiety and everything's about fear. And maybe that's good fear and it's leading you beyond your comfort zone, stepping outside of that box where you feel like you're alive again. So that's a big part of building back up once we've broken everything down and neutralized it and really released all of that negative emotion, and finding another way to, like we were saying before, expand your perspective and start to rebuild the story in a different way. Like whether it's around the Ukraine, like, okay, now at least maybe I have enough money that I can give to a charity and I can feel like my money's working on the ground and helping them in some way. Just things like that, that whatever the issue is that's really causing you stress and anxiety, where you can start to make a positive impact.
Right. And whatever that looks like, it can be so small, but it can be, if it resonates and connects with you, you're going to feel a sense of honoring yourself and making a difference in this world.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I really love this visual, this concept of like, because when you're so in the fear, it's so clouded and it's really blinding, and it is hard to see what is fear, like survival mode stuff that was used to be back in the day, like you might get eaten by a tiger, versus
you look like you're in it right now too with the with the makeup. You're right. Like, yeah, you look like you're in the jungle. I love it.
In the jungle, like, whoa, am I about to be attacked by a tiger, or is this just an illusion?
I missed the memo. I wish I had. Yeah.
Next time we're gonna do this again. We'll do more.
Yeah.
You can dress as your warrior, whatever that looks like. That'll be fun.
Oh, I have one.
All right. But then this other that is you touched on, which is you have to get to neutral. I think that point is so powerful to then start to say, now I see these different voices. There's the voice of fear. There's the voice of like the conditioning, the conditioned self, the saboteur. And then there's the voice of, ooh, I'm really like hitting an edge of growth and expansion.
Yeah.
And that's a scary but fun, exciting place to be. And when you can start to delineate and check in with your body on those differences, I think it really, gives a sense of ease, right? It gives a sense of like, okay, a sense of control too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's where gaining back control from your fears and your anxieties and your saboteurs is where freedom comes from. That's like exactly what my first podcast episode is about, which we'll get to, but you hit it right on the head. Sorry, I'm still in the Northeast, so my nose is running a little bit.
Yeah, it's cold where you are, right? It's actually not a great day here either. Yeah. But one of my favorite expressions, I have this visual, maybe I'll post it later. It's fear gives birth to freedom. And it's this picture of this woman's legs that's just like flowers blossoming. And it's like, you got to go through the tunnel to get that freedom. And no different than you, Wendy. Like I wake up and often the mornings, it's like a start of like this anxiety, but it's just an underlying like something. And then when I listen to it and give it space and check in, and I similar to you, feel like I've got all these different personalities, and I used to think, do I have multiple personality disorders that's undiagnosed? And it's no one talks about this and helps you realize and use these different tools. But by giving that voice every morning, it is a release. It is the recognize, release, refocus.
Yeah. I think it's a really good tool. And I agree. Like all of those things, they need to be honored. Mine's usually my little girl. I always say she's like in her PJs and she's just tugging on my pant leg. She's always afraid. She's always like, well, what's going to happen today? And I just give her a little love and she goes back to bed.
Yeah. Oh, so much often what we need. Can you just share briefly, like kind of the overlying, because you're in this space a lot with your clients and who you work with, like what is the stigma around mental health? Like what do you hear? I know you've touched on it a bit, but if you could just talk a minute.
I see it a lot in mostly in corporate culture. And still a lawyer in a big law firm, and a lot of people still feel like those spaces are unsafe to come out and talk about any way that they may appear compromised mentally, because that's what your resume is selling them on, right? So I think it's going to be a lot of education, a lot of sharing our stories to create empathy in that space for the people who just continue to push it under the rug, whether it's their own issues or other people's issues, to continue to give people that microphone and that place to share. And also empowering people, both people who are struggling, giving them vocabulary, giving them safe spaces to talk about it, but also empowering the people who don't know what to do, like we were talking about before, like trying to talk you out of it, or because they feel so helpless in that space, empowering them with the tools that I don't think they have right now.
Right.
Ways to start those conversations, ways to empower their organizations, their leadership, to really keep this issue in the forefront and understand how it's affecting not only their individuals, but their bottom line.
Yes, exactly. It all feeds together. It's all the same.
You want them to be productive. You want retention. You want to attract new talent. All of these things are financial imperatives, and it's the right thing to do. So,
and people can tell, just so you know, those of you out there listening, you're a manager or you're fooling yourself, your employees know, your team knows if you're just checking a box. But give me feedback, and then you don't really listen. We're smart. Subconsciously, we are very aware, and we can feel when it's safe or not. And I'm bringing light. I'm saying this explicitly because I've heard this from many of my clients over and over again, saying, they're saying all this stuff, Lauren, and I want to use these tools that you're sharing, and I want to have an open dialogue, and I want to say, is this a safe space to be vulnerable? But I feel like it still comes back to smack me in the face in different ways. Maybe they don't think I'm as strong as I am. I don't get the promotion. I don't, all that stuff. So,
there's a lot of work to be done.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's stuff like this, and it's stuff like your podcast. And I want you to share about that, Wendy, that is really making the impact and the difference.
And I do corporate programs. I just want to talk about that for a second too.
Yeah.
They're on my website as well, but I do go into law firms, organizations. Over the last year, it's really been incredible to see the change that has happened, both with individuals and then individuals becoming advocates within their own companies because of the program that, I stimulated them, which stimulated even more change, which has just been incredible. So there's one on the 3R process for processing the 3R model to processing anxiety. And then there's also that 3E model that I touched on to end the stigma within your corporate cultures. But yes, the podcast is starting next Wednesday. It's launching with 4 episodes right off the bat. So I'm really excited about that. 2 are just solo shows. And then I have 2 amazing guests that I'm interviewing. And of course, it's all around mental health, but also around recovery, disordered eating, disordered drinking. It just sort of seeps into everything. So there's a lot of good stuff there. And I'm really excited about it. And one thing I do want to mention that's coming out along with that first episode is a tool that I created. I curated a list of questions and prompts that's called the anxiety audit. And so when people see that I moved from decades of debilitating disorders to freedom from all of that, they want to know where to start, because that's what I want to know. Like, how do you do that? Where do you start? And this is a great place to start. So it's not up on my website yet, but if you sign up for the download that I talked about before, that has the meditation, it also has how to diffuse your triggers and 2 other really great pieces of content. Then you'll automatically get that anxiety audit next week when it drops. So,
oh, that's amazing. What a great tool. I want it. Make sure you include me. And I'm also getting that meditation. I haven't heard it, but that's another thing that comes up all the time with the women that my circle are like, where do I start? Meditation is just not for me. I'm like, you're a human being. you just haven't found the right dial yet. You haven't
Yeah.
tuned in. But once you find it, you find your spot, it'll start, you know.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I love what you're doing with the corporate stuff, because I think what's really powerful when you have a speaker come in and deliver a workshop is the team starts speaking the same language. It's like some people are reading their self-awareness books, some people aren't, some people are here, some people have all this bias. And what I think it really does, that by you going in there and speaking to it, is it creates this common ground, like, okay. And it's a force function to having some really open dialogue. Like, what are we going to take from this workshop? We've invested in it. Now, what does this actually mean for us?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is really great. It's a great jumping off point because there are other smaller workshops, either in the we have like different locations in our firm, like bringing those home to the people that you see every day and starting another dialogue.
And the ripple effect, then they take these tools and they bring them into their home and with their families, and it can start creating more honest, authentic communication as parents, as partners, as a well-centered, someone that's just caring as a citizen to wanting to improve and have dialogue in this kind of way. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Wendy, I know you got to run. I know you've got more interviews coming up. You're a busy lady, but this has been so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing just a kernel of the work that you do with us. I hope it planted some seeds in people's hearts. They carry it with them. And Wendy's book is available on Amazon as well. So check it out. I'll do a follow-up with this so everyone knows the links and can grab those. But thanks again, Wendy. I hope to have you back again with Warrior Paint or whatever it looks like.
Oh, yeah. I am coming full on makeup. I'm going to start thinking about my outfit like immediately after this. I love it. I thought you had like football paint. I was like, damn, are we like powder puffing? Like, what's going on? I love it.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a javelin all the way through college. So I'll bring my javelin with me.
Oh my gosh. I used to wear this before games because it helped me get in that energy. And as foolish as it is, it's back to, I believe a lot of these tools are so silly and stupid, I put that in quotes, but I'm a big believer of, if it works for you, if it feels good, where's the judgment? Right?
No, right, because it's all mental. It's all mindset. So if you're in the mindset, a warrior mindset, before you even walk onto the court or the field or whatever it may be, I was the same way. Like my hair would be like, oh my God. Like
you're in the zone. You're in your zone.
Yeah. And I thought it was intimidating to the other people too, right? Like if I can just make them cower in fear before I even touch my javelin, then break it.
There you go. All right, Wendy, thanks again. Lots of love to you. And I'll talk to you. I'll be in touch with you. We'll catch
Thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks for holding space for all of this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the work you do.
All right. I will see you soon.
Awkward goodbye. I hate doing these goodbyes. They're just never fun, but see you later. Everyone give a wave. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone.